I'm Emily Rhodes, and I always believed that love meant sacrifice until I learned the truth. My spinal treatment savings had bought my sister a convertible. At my own birthday party. In front of everyone. Can you imagine smiling through grilled corn and cake, only to find your health stolen and gift-wrapped for someone else? Before I share how my entire world cracked in one sunny afternoon, tell me, where are you watching this video from? Drop your city in the comments, and if you've ever been betrayed by your own family, you're not alone. Now, let me take you back to that day. They say Los Angeles birthdays feel like dreams, sun-drenched lawns, grilled ribs sizzling, the Pacific breeze tangled in string lights. Mine felt like a waking nightmare. I should have known something was off when my parents insisted on throwing the party at our family home in Glendale. They don't usually go all out unless it's for Zoe. But I didn't say anything. I smiled, hugged my guests, even helped set out the fruit platters like the good daughter I've always tried to be. My back ached, as always. A dull throb that pulsed through my spine when I bent to refill the lemonade jug. I was 2 weeks away from the final stage of my spinal realignment therapy, treatment I had spent 3 years saving for down to the last dollar. And somehow, I still believed that today would be about me. We had just gathered in the backyard. Everyone circled around the patio as Dad clinked his glass with a fork. That fake showman grin plastered on his face. Before we bring out the cake, he said, we have a surprise. For Zoe. The crowd turned. Even the dogs stopped barking. I froze. Zoe, the picture of Malibu perfection in white denim and tangerine lip gloss, giggled. Wait, what? She said, tilting her head like she'd just won a reality show. And then Mom stepped forward with her hand on Dad's arm. It's from us. From the family. I heard it before I saw it. The soft purr of the engine pulling into the driveway, followed by the collective gasps. A brand new cherry red convertible curved into view, ribboned like a Christmas commercial. My stomach twisted. That's for me. Zoe squealed, bouncing like a kid. From the family savings, Dad beamed. You've been working so hard, and we figured it was time. My ears rang. I could barely process the laughter, the applause. I turned to Mom. What savings? She blinked. What do you mean? I stepped closer. What family savings, Mom? The only money we've pooled in the last year was mine for the surgery. My surgery. Her smile wavered, but Dad jumped in. Emily, honey, let's not do this now. My voice rose. You used my money? The money I saved for my spine? The clapping stopped. Someone dropped a glass. Zoe twirled her keys, shrugging. It was just sitting there, Em. And you're always saying how tight things are. You didn't even ask me. I snapped. You knew what that money was for. Dad stepped between us. Emily, calm down. We all agreed this would benefit the family. No, I said, breath catching. It benefits Zoe. It cripples me. No one moved. Aunt Lena stared at her shoes. My cousin pretended to check his phone. It was Zoe who broke the silence with a laugh so soft it could slice skin. Honestly, Em, it's not that big a deal. You act like you're dying. My hand shook. I wanted to scream, cry, collapse. But instead, I turned around and walked straight into the house, leaving the scent of birthday candles behind. I don't remember walking up the stairs. Only the sound of my sandals clicking too sharply on the hardwood, each step louder than the last. The hum of laughter still drifted up from the backyard. Someone started singing an off-key happy birthday as I turned the knob to my room. My sanctuary. Or at least, it had been. The scent of lavender still hung in the air from last night's diffuser session. I'd read somewhere that it helped calm nerves and reduce pain. Not that I ever got past the placebo stage. My back had been screaming louder than ever lately. Still, it was my space. The one place I could feel in control of something. I walked straight to the dresser. The second drawer from the top, the one I kept locked with that tiny bronze padlock from college. Except, today, it wasn't locked. The drawer slid open far too easily. Empty. Not just empty, cleaned out. The manila envelope I had stuffed with weekly bills, birthday cash, odd job payoffs, carefully tucked receipts, it was all gone. Every last cent. Every hope. Every plan. My mouth went dry. No. No. Maybe I'd moved it. Maybe I'd hidden it somewhere else. I dropped to my knees, yanking open every drawer, pulling out socks, notebooks, even the backup envelopes I sometimes used to divide months. Gone. I tore through my closet next, behind the shoeboxes, beneath the loose floorboard I'd once used to stash my passport. Nothing. Not even a scrap of a post-it note. Just dust and the sound of my breathing growing louder and thinner by the second. I sat back against the wall, clutching the edge of the dresser to stay upright. My spine flared up with a bolt of pain so sharp I let out a sound I didn't recognize. Not a scream. Not a sob. Just air escaping a collapsing balloon. How do you react when the ground underneath you has been stolen? I couldn't even cry properly. I pressed my fingers to my eyes, hard, trying to force tears out. But nothing came. Until it did. The first sob was almost a cough. Then another. Then a full unraveling. I curled into myself on the floor, surrounded by kicked-over pillows and half-open drawers, shaking. "It can't be real," I whispered over and over. They wouldn't do that. Not them. Not to me. But they had. I had counted it all out so carefully, $70, $300 across 3 years. A mix of cash and checks I'd never deposited, afraid the IRS would flag my disability income. I kept it in cash for a reason. Safe. Private. Mine. Every MRI. Every night I skipped takeout. Every time I refused to go out with Kayla because I had budget priorities. Every hour of freelance coding I pushed through despite the pain, it all lived in that envelope. And now, it lived in Zoe's convertible. I didn't know what time it was. The sky outside my window had turned soft pink, the golden hour washing over my lilac curtains like a lie. I lay there for I don't know how long, my body still except for the throbbing in my spine that refused to let me forget the stakes. I had been 2 weeks from surgery. 2 weeks from a real shot at relief. From maybe standing for more than 10 minutes without collapsing. From getting off the stupid folding chair I used to shower. And now I had nothing but a stiff back, an empty drawer, and a family full of smiles downstairs. Eventually, I made it to my bed. I didn't even pull the sheets down. Just lay on top, facing the ceiling, counting the tiny cracks in the plaster like they were stars. Somewhere downstairs, someone lit sparklers. I heard Zoe squeal again. Like this day had been about her from the beginning. Maybe it always had. I didn't realize I'd fallen asleep until I woke up to darkness. The sounds of the party had died down. My phone, untouched, blinked once on the nightstand. A message from Kayla, probably. I didn't answer it. I just lay there, wrapped in the silence, letting the truth settle like sediment in a riverbed. Slow. Heavy. Permanent. They had chosen Zoe's thrill over my healing. A car over a spine. A moment of vanity over a lifetime of pain. And if they could do that once, what else were they capable of? Santa Monica always felt like a different world. Even when everything else in my life was spiraling, there was something about the palm-lined streets and the ocean air that made me believe healing was possible. Dr. Chen's clinic sat tucked between a vegan gelato shop and a crystal bookstore, very LA, very unassuming. Inside, it smelled like eucalyptus and warm rice tea. A bamboo water feature trickled gently in the corner, and spa music hummed just beneath it, that kind of ambient ocean sound loop meant to relax people who couldn't relax on their own. But not even that soft, lapping tide could soothe what was ripping through me. "Emily," smiled Mia, the front desk assistant, when I stepped in. "Hey, girl, how's the back today?" I managed a nod. "Better," I lied. She beamed. "Awesome. Dr. Chen's running just a little behind, but you can head to room 2, he'll be with you in a few." I walked slowly down the hall. Not because I wanted to. Because I had to. Every step felt like a conversation between bone and betrayal. Room 2 smelled like peppermint oil and clean linen. I lowered myself onto the padded table, wincing as I settled into place. Dr. Chen knocked and entered moments later, clipboard in hand. His warm eyes crinkled behind his wire-framed glasses. "Emily, I was just reviewing your last scans. It's time for the final stage, isn't it?" His voice was hopeful, excited. "I've got a feeling we're close. How's the pain?" I stared at the ceiling. "Emily?" I couldn't hold his gaze. I need to cancel the last part of the treatment." A beat of silence. "Cancel," he repeated gently. Why? My fingers knotted in my lap. I can't afford it anymore. He blinked. Slowly. I could see the gears turning in his mind, like he was trying to reconcile my words with every carefully saved check I'd handed over for 3 years. But you already paid for Emily. The last session's already reserved. And your tests show it's urgent. Has something changed? I nodded. Everything. I didn't tell him about the barbecue. Or the keys Zoe twirled like trophies. Or the empty drawer that had once held my future. I just said, the money's gone. He didn't press. He just exhaled softly, rubbing his chin. Look, I could talk to the billing office. We could delay your payment plan or no, I interrupted, my voice cracking. Please don't. I'm not here to ask for favors. I just wanted to let you know. I can't do it. I'm sorry. I wasn't even sure who I was apologizing to, him, myself, the version of me that had believed healing was a choice instead of a privilege. Dr. Chin sat down on the rolling stool beside me. His voice dropped into something quieter. Emily, if you wait too long, the progress we've made might reverse. You're in more danger than you think. I swallowed. I know. He paused, then placed a hand gently on my shoulder, not a doctor's touch, but a human one. You've worked so hard for this. I thought I had control, I whispered. But I guess I never did. He didn't try to offer platitudes. Just nodded, solemnly. When I left the clinic, the sun was almost directly overhead. The sidewalk shimmered in the heat. I walked down toward the beach, where the waves danced like nothing bad had ever happened in the world. I sat on a bench facing the water and let myself feel every ounce of shame, anger, and helplessness. I wanted to scream. I wanted to vanish. I wanted someone to stop me on the street and say, you don't deserve this. But no one did. People jogged. Kids played with sand. Couples laughed. And I sat there quietly, invisible, hurting. When I finally stood to leave, I checked my phone. Just one new message. Kayla, hey. You okay? Been thinking about you. Let me know if you want to talk. Always here. For a moment, I just stared at her words. Maybe I couldn't fix what had been broken. But maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to face it all alone. Venice Beach cafes always smell like oat milk and dreams. It's where artists draft screenplays they'll never finish and influencers pretend not to film themselves. But for me, it was just neutral ground. A place far enough from the wound to breathe. Kayla chose the spot. Of course she did. She always knew where my nervous system would feel safest. High ceilings, quiet corners, a menu with enough herbal teas to stage a rebellion against caffeine. When I stepped inside, she was already there, tall almond latte in one hand, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown she didn't need. Kayla Thompson, my ride or die since community college. Web developer by day, chaos by nature. The moment our eyes met, she stood up and pulled me into a hug, so tight my spine protested. You smell like the ocean and heartbreak, she said, pulling back just enough to study my face. Which one hit harder? I tried to laugh. It almost worked. We slid into the booth by the window. I stared at the foam art in my chamomile tea while Kayla waited. Not with impatience, she was giving me space. Finally, I exhaled. They used it. All of it. Kayla's brow furrowed. Used what? My surgery fund. My entire savings. $70,000. I couldn't even say it without my voice splintering. They bought Zoe a convertible. Dead silence. Kayla blinked. Once. Twice. Then she sat back slowly and whispered, I'm gonna need a second. She stared out the window like she was trying to keep from flipping the entire table. Okay. Breathe. You're serious. I nodded. It was supposed to be in a drawer in my room. I saved it in cash to avoid messing with my coverage. It's gone, Kayla. They cleaned me out like I was a piggy bank. I expected shock. Maybe a gasp. But what I got was fire. Kayla's entire posture changed. Her shoulders squared. Her voice lowered. Emily, I love you, but what the actual? She cut herself off, remembering we were in public. Your parents stole from you. They called it family savings. She scoffed. Yeah? Well, if family savings come from your solo bank account, I guess I've been missing the group discount. I couldn't even smile. I just stirred my tea numb. I can't do the last procedure, I said. Dr. Chin tried to help, but I couldn't even tell him why. I just walked away. Kayla leaned in, elbows on the table. You're not walking away. You're regrouping. I shook my head. There's nothing left to regroup with. She tilted her head. You know what I do for a living, right? Build websites and roast tech bros on Slack? Correct. But I also happen to know someone who works for the state tax enforcement unit. She specializes in asset reviews and suspicious high-dollar purchases. That made me pause. Kayla, no, listen, she said, gripping her cup like it was fueling her rage. If your parents dipped into undeclared money, especially cash that was never gifted to Zoe, that car could raise flags. I'm not saying call in the feds. But if something smells off, it is off, I whispered. Exactly. And I don't care if they're your parents, stealing is stealing. I rubbed my temples. It's not just the money. It's what it meant. That surgery was the only thing keeping me functioning. And now? I'm just supposed to code websites from bed and pretend I'm fine. Kayla reached across the table and grabbed my hand. You're not fine. And you shouldn't have to pretend. We sat like that for a beat. I could text her, she said. My contact. Just to ask what it would take to look into a sketchy cash-funded car purchase. No names. Just curiosity. I didn't say yes. But I didn't say no. Instead, I looked out the window at the blur of boardwalk wanderers and sunburned tourists, and for the first time since the barbecue, I didn't feel entirely helpless. There was a thread. A tiny, fragile one. But it was something. I'm not asking for revenge, I said softly. I know, Kayla nodded. You're asking for justice. And a chance to get your life back. When we parted ways that afternoon, she gave me the kind of hug that says I've got you, whether you ask or not. And as I walked toward the sunset, the breeze tickling my face, I felt something new rise in me. Not anger. Not grief. Resolve. The convertible was still in the driveway when I got home. It shimmered under the California sunset like something sacred, like a red lacquered lie that caught every last bit of fading light and threw it in my face. Zoe leaned against it, her phone angled perfectly for selfies. She was laughing so loud I could hear it before I even pulled into the curb. That high, sparkling giggle she used when she wanted to be admired. From down the street, I watched her flip her hair and slide back into the leather seat, one leg bent, designer sunglasses perched just right. It was the laugh that hit me hardest. How could someone laugh like that, knowing they were driving away with someone else's future? I parked around the corner and waited until she drove off before slipping into the house through the side door. I didn't want another confrontation. Not tonight. My spine couldn't take it. My soul couldn't, either. The house was quiet now. My parents weren't home, Mom's shoes were gone, and Dad's truck was missing from the garage. I padded upstairs like a ghost, careful not to let the floorboards creak. When I reached my room, I locked the door behind me. Not that it would stop them, but I needed the illusion of safety if nothing else. I collapsed onto the bed and stared at the ceiling, letting the silence wrap around me like a weighted blanket. Too heavy. Too still. Zoe's laughter echoed in my mind. I tried to scrub it away with logic, but it stuck. It wasn't just that she got the car. It was that she didn't care. She didn't care that she'd stolen something sacred to me. Something earned. She didn't ask, didn't apologize, didn't even look me in the eye the night of the barbecue. She just drove. I opened my text to Kayla and typed, she just drove past me. Laughing. Like she didn't break me. Then I deleted it. What was the point? I glanced around my room. Same lavender curtains. Same stack of coding books. Same sticky note on the mirror that read, keep going. You're almost there. Almost where? The pain in my back pulsed again, sharp this time. I reached for the heating pad, plugged it in, and curled into a shape that felt vaguely human. Every inch of this room had once made me feel safe. Now, it just reminded me of how much I'd lost, and how little they thought of me. I thought of my parents. Of how quickly they smiled when Zoe squealed at the car. How Mom had linked arms with her, proud as a pageant mom. How Dad handed over the keys like he was passing down a legacy. No one had even looked at me. Not until I started yelling. And even then, their eyes held more embarrassment than remorse. That's what haunted me. Not the money, not even the car, but the way they looked at me like I was the problem for being hurt. I wrapped the heating pad tighter around my waist and whispered to the empty room, "They'll never believe me, will they?" Not over Zoe. Not ever. She'd always been the golden one, smiling, charming, camera-ready. I was the quiet one. The practical one. The one who made appointments and built spreadsheets and declined happy hour invites because she had freelance deadlines. Who would believe the quiet one? A tear slipped down my cheek. I didn't wipe it away. I just let it fall, like everything else had. I tried to dive into work. I told myself if I just focused hard enough, kept my fingers moving across the keyboard, drowned out the world with lines of code and client requests, everything else would blur out. It didn't. My body wouldn't let me. Sitting upright for more than 20 minutes sent lightning bolts through my lower spine. The makeshift lumbar pillow I'd crafted from an old throw blanket did nothing now. Every movement, every click, every scroll was pain. I started missing client messages. One job, a rush redesign for a boutique jewelry store, slipped past deadline. I stared at the blinking cursor on the apology draft email and couldn't even find the words. I wasn't flaky. I wasn't that kind of freelancer. But I was becoming it. Because I didn't have a choice anymore. By the third missed deadline, one client politely told me she'd be moving in another direction. I wished her luck, pretended not to care, and sat there in the dark with my laptop sliding off my knees. I couldn't feel my left toes. I texted Kayla, "If this doesn't work out, I don't know what I'll do." Then, because that looked too desperate, I added a second message, "Ignore me. Just venting." Her reply came in under a minute. "You're not alone. I've got you. Don't forget that." It helped. A little. But not enough to fix anything. I tried stretching between jobs. Lying flat on the floor with yoga music and scented oils. I did everything Dr. Chin had taught me: breathing, alignment, even acupressure with tennis balls pressed against the wall. Nothing helped anymore. And worse? I could feel the shift inside me. That mental unraveling that comes when you've lost too many pieces and have no way to glue them back. I stopped answering unknown calls. Couldn't bear the possibility of Dr. Chen's office checking in. Or worse, clients chasing me down with gentle, just following up, messages that made my stomach twist with shame. I started sleeping more. Or trying to. My body would wake me every few hours with sharp jolts or a dull, throbbing ache in my lower back, hips, and legs. I'd stare at the ceiling until sunrise, feeling like a prisoner inside skin that no longer listened to me. Mom started asking fewer questions, which somehow hurt more than anything else. She didn't even ask how the treatment was going. She just floated past me in the kitchen in the mornings with a smile, humming while she brewed her oat milk latte. Dad barely looked at me. Zoe, of course, was gone most days, off in her convertible, her social media filled with Sunset Beach reels and captions about manifesting joy. She didn't even tag me anymore. Like I'd been edited out of the family feed. It felt like I had. By Friday, I was lying flat on my bedroom floor, laptop on a pillow beside me, trying to debug a Shopify plugin for a bakery I'd once dreamed of visiting in person. I couldn't even sit up long enough to test the code. When the client emailed asking for a Zoom check-in, I replied that I'd lost my voice. That was the first real lie. The second came when I told myself things would bounce back on their own. By Saturday, I knew they wouldn't. I'd used up every heating pad, every pain bomb, every mind trick I had. I was starting to forget what it felt like to move freely. To walk without fear. To laugh without guarding my ribs against spasms. This wasn't healing anymore. This was decline. The kind of slow, quiet collapse that nobody noticed because you didn't scream loud enough when it started. And the worst part? There was no money left to stop it. So I did what I hadn't done in days. I picked up my phone and texted Kayla again. This time, no edits. No second message. Just this: "I think I need help." It started with yelling. At first, I thought it was just Zoe on another dramatic call, the kind she staged loudly enough for the neighborhood to overhear. But this wasn't her voice. It was his. Dad. I sat up too fast and gasped the pain a spike up my spine, but I pushed through it, dragging myself to the window. I moved the curtain just enough to see. There they were. Two men in navy polos and khakis, clipboard tucked under one arm, metallic clamp in hand. The kind that locks onto a car will like a cuff. And Zoe, barefoot in her pink velvet tracksuit, was screaming. Not crying. Screaming. "You can't do this. This is my car." One of the men, mid-40s, with a DMV badge swinging from his lanyard, just shook his head. "Ma'am, the asset is flagged. There's nothing else to discuss." Then came Dad, charging out of the house, red-faced, voice already halfway to boiling. "What the hell is going on here?" "We're here on an order to repossess," the first man replied calmly. "Recent asset acquisition linked to suspicious financial activity. You should have received the first notice in the mail last week." I watched as Dad's face twisted. "You people can't just. We paid for that car." Zoe spun toward him. "We? You said it was a gift." "I said it was from the family." He roared. "Which means I signed for it." They were yelling over each other now, voices overlapping like a discordant orchestra. And then I saw the tow truck. It rolled up the driveway like judgment itself, silent, inevitable, unapologetic. Within minutes, the clamp had done its job. The car was secured, tilted upward, the glint of its chrome wheels catching the last light of day like a punchline. I should have felt triumphant. But all I felt was cold. This wasn't justice. It was exposure. And now it was personal. Because the moment the tow truck pulled away, Dad turned toward the house. And he looked up. Straight at my window. I froze. He couldn't possibly know. Could he? Seconds later, I heard the front door slam. "Emily." His voice ripped through the house like a thunderclap. I stayed frozen, heart pounding in my chest, unsure if I was ready. But there were footsteps now, up the stairs, too fast, too heavy. Another slam. My door burst open. "You did this," he hissed, eyes wild, voice low now in that way that's somehow worse than shouting. "What? Did you do?" I sat up straighter. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play innocent," he growled. "The car. The repo. The investigation. This has your fingerprints all over it." "I don't even know who took the car," I said, voice trembling but steady. "But if it was purchased with stolen funds, maybe you should be looking at yourself." He advanced 2 steps. "You've always been dramatic, Emily, but this crosses a line. And what line did you cross when you took $70,000 out of my drawer?" I fired back. Silence. The air thickened. "I didn't take anything," he said finally. "It was our money." "No," I said, rising slowly despite the pain, despite everything. "It was mine. Every bill. Every coding job. Every freelance contract I took on to avoid relying on anyone. You're part of this family," he spat. "I was. Until you sold my body out for a convertible. That did it." He turned to storm out, but not before muttering under his breath, "This is what entitlement looks like. No gratitude. No loyalty." And just like that, the conversation was over. But the consequences were just beginning. Zoe was still outside, sobbing into her phone. Mom had appeared now, her robe fluttering as she stepped onto the lawn. Neighbors had started to gather on the sidewalk like a crowd drawn to a wreck they didn't want to admit intrigued them. And me? I stood in the hallway as Dad thundered down the stairs, shaking from adrenaline, pain, and something worse, clarity. They knew it was coming. They just didn't think I had the nerve. But I did. And the car? It was just the beginning. Kayla opened the door before I could even knock. She must have seen my Uber pulling up. Or maybe she just knew, the way best friends sometimes do, that I was seconds away from falling apart. "You look like hell," she said softly, no judgment in her voice. Just facts. Concern wrapped in dry humor. "I feel worse." She helped me inside, one arm around my waist like I was made of glass and anger. I was both. The moment the door shut behind us, I sank onto her couch and let myself breathe for the first time in hours. Kayla knelt beside me, brushing my hair back. "What happened?" "They took the car," I whispered. "In front of the whole neighborhood. Clamp, tow truck, the works." "Holy wait, seriously? That fast?" I nodded. And then Dad lost it. On me. Like I orchestrated the whole thing just to destroy them. Kayla sat back on her heels, blinking. Well, I did make a call. I looked at her, stunned. She stood and went to the kitchen. I was gonna tell you. I just didn't expect it to move that fast. What did you do? I texted my contact at the tax enforcement office. I didn't name names, but I said someone I knew had their medical savings stolen and used to buy a $70,000 convertible in cash, with no paper trail. I stared at her. Kayla, I never gave your name, she said quickly. But the car matched a flag they already had. I guess the timing just worked out. I sat there numb. So that's why the suits came. That's why he thinks I did it. Well, she winced. You kind of did. Indirectly. I was just trying to survive. And you still are. She handed me a mug of chamomile tea, our ritual, and sat across from me. The investigation's real, she said. My contact called me today. They're opening a full review into your parents' finances. Not just because of the car, but because the purchase was tied to undeclared income. Zoe's name is on the registration, but your dad wired the money. From where? Off-record funds, apparently. Which means the IRS is gonna love this. I let out a bitter laugh. Great. So now I'm the villain and the whistleblower. Kayla hesitated. About that, I looked up. They're spinning it, she said quietly. Zoe's been posting cryptic stuff all day. Stories about betrayal within the family, how jealousy ruins everything. Your mom even commented something about loyalty being a two-way street. I closed my eyes. So now I'm the traitor. They're trying to control the narrative, she said. That's what people do when the truth threatens their version of reality. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Instead, I stared into my tea, watching the steam rise like smoke from something already burning. Emily, Kayla said gently. You know you did the right thing, right? Then why does it feel like I lit the match and set my whole life on fire? She didn't answer. Because the truth was I had. Not by choice. Not out of revenge. But because there was no other way to stop the slow theft of my body, my future, and my autonomy. And now? Now, they all hated me for it. My mother hadn't called. Not to ask if I was okay. Not to check on my back. Nothing. My father's last words echoed in my skull. No gratitude. No loyalty. Zoe, the one who'd gained the most, had the gall to paint me as the threat. It was almost impressive. The speed with which they turned victimhood into PR. Kayla moved beside me on the couch and wrapped her arm around my shoulders. They might never see you clearly, she said. But I do. And so will the world. I wanted to believe her. But in that moment, all I could feel was the sting of being cast as the villain in a story I'd spent my whole life trying to write with love. The house was quieter than I expected. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the brittle, pressurized silence that feels like a lid about to blow. You could almost hear the echo of things unsaid bouncing off the walls. I stepped inside without knocking. My key still worked. Technically, I still lived there. But everything about that walk through the front door felt like trespassing. No one greeted me. The kitchen lights were off, even though it was nearly dark outside. I passed by the dining table, still set with the good placemats, the ones Mom only used when guests were expected. But there were no guests anymore. Just ghosts of a family dinner that would never happen again. I found them in the living room. Dad pacing in slow circles. Mom curled on the sofa, clutching a crumpled tissue, her makeup smeared. Zoe sat in the armchair, arms folded, phone face down beside her like it had betrayed her too. They didn't notice me at first. It was Dad who finally looked up. His jaw clenched, but he didn't speak. He just stared cold, like I was the smoke that still lingered after a fire. Mom sniffled into her tissue. They're going to audit us. I said nothing. Zoe looked at me like I was the one who keyed her car, not the one who funded it. You have no idea what you've done. I met her gaze. I know exactly what I've done. Dad turned away, muttering to himself. We tried to help her. We took care of her. And this is what we get. Help. Right. By emptying my savings, lying to my face, then turning me into the villain when I tried to survive? If that was help, I'd hate to see what betrayal looked like. Still, I said nothing. Mom finally broke the silence, voice shaking. Family is supposed to be everything, Emily. That got to me. Not in the way they hoped. Not with guilt or second-guessing, but with clarity. Because family, real family, doesn't take your pain and turn it into profit. Real family doesn't gaslight you into silence or weaponize the word loyalty as a shield for theft. Real family would have driven me to that surgery and held my hand through it. I looked at her, her eyes red and full of some mix of fear and shame, and I realized something vital. They weren't afraid because they felt bad. They were afraid because they got caught. So I let the silence grow. Let it fill every crevice of the room until it became a mirror they couldn't look away from. Mom started sobbing again, her body shaking with it. Dad rubbed his temples like the world was too loud. Zoe picked up her phone, glanced at me, and muttered something under her breath. But I didn't flinch. I didn't speak. Because for the first time in my life, I understood that silence can be power. Not the kind used to suppress truth, but the kind that lets others sit with theirs. So I stood there, letting them unravel in their own words, their own guilt, their own spinning narratives. And when I finally turned to go back upstairs, I didn't say a word. Because I didn't need to. Let them talk. Let them blame. Let them burn. I found her in the garage. Zoe. She was sitting on a folded-up lawn chair, knees pulled to her chest, mascara streaks tracing rivers down her cheeks. The silence between us was thicker than anything we'd ever shared as sisters. And maybe for the first time in our lives, it was honest. She didn't look up right away. Just sat there, staring at the empty space where her convertible used to gleam. It looked larger now. Lonelier. The place where Eli had lived. I didn't know, she whispered finally, voice barely audible. I swear, Em. I thought Dad was helping me out. I stayed in the doorway, watching her. Helping you with what? I asked softly. A luxury toy? She wiped her eyes. He said we had some savings. That it was from a family account. I didn't know it was yours. I let that hang in the air. Because even if she didn't know, she didn't ask. She never questioned how our parents, always so frugal, suddenly had 70 grand to throw at her post-breakup self-care crisis. She never once asked me if I was okay while she posted videos of herself cruising down Sunset Boulevard with the top down. Do you remember what I said the night of the barbecue? I asked. Zoe looked up, blinking through the fog of tears. I said that money was for my treatment. That I'd been saving it for years. She nodded slowly. I didn't believe you. Why not? She opened her mouth. Closed it. Then, finally, because no one else reacted. Mom and Dad just brushed it off. Like you were being dramatic. I stepped inside now slowly. Zoe, do you know what it feels like to need something that badly? To wake up every morning with a body that screams at you? To live every day holding yourself together with heat packs and denial, just so no one has to carry you. She buried her face in her hands. I kept going. I planned that surgery like a military operation. Every invoice. Every session. I skipped vacations, dates, birthdays. I didn't live so I could maybe walk without pain. And then I opened a drawer and found it all gone. Zoe didn't answer. She didn't have to. The crying started again, real this time. Not performative. Not curated. Just broken. I'm sorry, she said between sobs. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was so tired of being the mess. And you always had it together. You were the strong one. I smiled, faint and bitter. Strong doesn't mean safe. It just means no one looks too closely. She hugged her knees tighter. I kept telling myself maybe it wasn't really your money, she said. That maybe you were exaggerating. That if it were true, Mom and Dad would never have let it happen. I crouched in front of her, knees screaming from the effort. It was my money, I said quietly. And it was never your car. Zoe's eyes widened. It was never your car, I repeated. And it was never your money. You drove someone else's healing down the Pacific Coast Highway and called it empowerment. She didn't argue. Didn't cry harder. She just stilled. Like something inside her had finally caught up with the truth. I stood slowly, wincing, letting the ache in my spine remind me exactly what had been stolen. Zoe didn't follow me out of the garage. And I didn't look back. Court isn't like the movies. There's no booming music or dramatic outbursts. Just fluorescent lights, the the whisper of papers turning, and the slow grind of truth against ego. I sat on the bench in a charcoal dress I hadn't worn since my last job interview. My spine ached, but I didn't move. Not even when my father took the stand. He looked older than I remembered. Maybe it was the lighting. Or maybe it was the weight of being forced to speak without a script. The courtroom was half full. A few strangers, a bored-looking clerk, and my mother seated 2 rows behind me. Her hands clutched her purse like it was the only solid thing left. Zoe wasn't there. She'd said she couldn't handle it. I didn't blame her. But me? I wouldn't have missed this for anything. The auditor was precise. Calm. Her voice sharp, but not cruel, as she walked Dad through the records. Wire transfers. Withdrawals. A paper trail that did everything my words never could. My father tried to stay composed. He failed. We were just consolidating, he said, stumbling over the term like it had just occurred to him. Moving funds around to help both our daughters. Is your name on the account from which the $70,000 was withdrawn? The auditor asked. A pause. No, he admitted. Whose name is? He hesitated. Then, Emily's. Was permission given to move that money? Another pause. She's our daughter. We didn't think we needed permission. There it was. The moment the air changed. The room didn't gasp. No one stood up. But I felt it, the silent recoil of everyone realizing this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was entitlement. I see, the auditor said, flipping a page. And when you purchased the vehicle, whose name was used for the transaction? Zoe's. Using funds withdrawn from an account owned by Emily. Yes. And Emily was not informed? A beat. She was present when we gave Zoe the car. It was almost funny. Not, we told her. Not, she approved. She was present. Like I was furniture. I didn't shift in my seat. Didn't cry. Didn't flinch. I just sat there, spine burning, letting him say it all under oath. Because every word condemned him more than I ever could. The judge was quiet through most of it. But I saw the way she glanced at me now and then, the way her eyes softened, not with pity, but with recognition. She saw me. For once, someone in power saw me. My father stumbled through the rest of the questions, growing more defensive, more vague, until he finally blurted, I'll repay everything. Every cent. Just, let's not ruin the family over this. That was his plea. Not for justice. Not for understanding. But for silence. I looked over at my mother. Her eyes were glassy, lips pursed. But she didn't look at me. Not once. When court adjourned for the day, I stood slowly. The pain made me wince, but I stood tall. Outside, reporters lingered. Nothing big, just local interest. A financial misuse case with a dramatic twist. One of them called my name. Emily? Any comment? I paused. Then I said simply, the truth doesn't need a comment. And walked away. I didn't need the spotlight. I had the record. The envelope was heavier than I expected. Not because of the money, it was a check now, crisp and official, signed by a man who'd avoided eye contact all the way through the handover, but because of what it meant. Restitution. Not just financial. The debt they couldn't admit in words, written out in numbers. I stared at it for a long time before sliding it into my bag and driving to Santa Monica. The road shimmered in the heat. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, not from fear, not anymore, but from disbelief. After everything. I was going back. Dr. Chen's clinic looked exactly the same. Still tucked between the same storefronts. Still humming with ocean sounds and eucalyptus air. But this time, something was different. This time, I was walking in not with fear, but with possibility. Mia blinked when she saw me. Emily? I nodded. You're back. I smiled. Is my spot still open? She lit up. Dr. Chen hoped it would be. He kept it in rotation, just in case. 10 minutes later, I was on the table. The same table where I'd once cried in silence. The same room. The same peppermint oil diffusing in the corner. Dr. Chen entered with a clipboard and the faintest smile. Looks like we're picking up where we left off. I'm ready, I said. No fear this time? Only forward, I replied. The procedure was meticulous. Precise. Every breath, every adjustment, every moment was a kind of miracle. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was mine. Afterward, I lay in recovery with warm blankets and a cold compress over my forehead, eyes closed, chest rising slow and steady. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt nothing. No pain. No pinch behind my hips when I inhaled. No sharpness when I shifted in bed. Just stillness. My body, silent for once. Kayla came that night. She didn't bring flowers. Just Thai food and a playlist labeled Victory Lap. "Let me see the scar," she said. I lifted the hem of the surgical gown just enough to reveal the neatly closed line along my lower back. She whistled softly. "Battle stripe." I nodded. Badge of survival. We ate on the hospital bed, laughing between bites. The world outside buzzed, cars, sunset, the clink of metal against trays. But inside? Peace. Later, as I lay back against the pillows, she scrolled her phone and suddenly stilled. What? She turned the screen to me. It was a video. Low quality, obviously recorded in court by someone's sneaky phone. My father at the stand, fumbling over his words. The clip cut off right as he said, "We didn't think we needed permission." The caption read, "When parents forget their daughter is a person, not a bank." It had gone viral. 1 million views. Thousands of comments. Some called it sad. Some called it brave. Some shared their own stories, stolen college funds, inheritance swallowed by guilt trips, family debts taken in silence. "You okay with this?" Kayla asked gently. I stared at the screen. Then I smiled. Let them watch. Because for once, I wasn't afraid to be seen. I had nothing to hide. And everything finally to reclaim. The beach was still cool when I stepped onto it. Not the biting cold of winter, but the soft kiss of dawn air rolling off the Pacific. The sky above Venice was streaked with gold and lavender, the horizon still sleepy. And me? I was walking. Really walking. No cane. No crutch. No uneven shuffle to hide the sharp catch of pain with every step. Just bare feet on sand, spine upright, breath steady. The world felt new. Not because it had changed, but because I had. The ocean didn't care what I'd survived. It didn't ask about bank accounts or betrayal or family fractures. It just moved forward, always forward. I stopped near the shoreline and let the foam dance around my toes. Behind me, my old life still existed. Same city. Same chaos. Same people, probably still trying to figure out how to explain away what happened without admitting anything at all. Mom had emailed once, 3 lines long. Something about hoping I was well and maybe one day we can talk. I hadn't responded. Not because I was angry. Not anymore. But because silence wasn't just a wound now. It was a boundary. Dad hadn't reached out. No apology. No explanation. Just the check, handed over like a legal obligation instead of something owed in blood and dignity. And Zoe. Zoe was quieter these days. Her social media had gone dark for a while. Last I heard, she was working again, selling real estate in the valley, keeping her head down. We hadn't spoken since the garage. But I didn't need closure from them anymore. Because I'd built my own. My apartment overlooked a tiny garden. 1 bedroom, soft blue walls, a creaky floorboard in the hallway that made me smile every time I stepped on it. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. No one had touched it but me. Kayla came over often. She brought books and wine and told stories that made me laugh so hard my ribs ached. She never asked me to forgive anyone. Never rushed the healing. She just stayed. That was love. Love that didn't ask for sacrifice as proof. Dr. Chin had cleared me for full recovery last week. He said my spine looked stronger than he expected. He said resilience wasn't just in the body, it was in the mind that refused to collapse even when the structure did. I told him I understood that now. That I finally understood everything. Because family is not who shares your blood. It's who sees your pain and doesn't turn away. It's who respects your no and celebrates your yes. It's who returns what they borrow and doesn't call it generosity. I walked farther down the beach, the waves keeping pace beside me. And as the sun rose, lighting the water in soft flame, I thought about the version of me who once whispered, "I can't believe this is real," on a bedroom floor while her spine spasmed in grief. She didn't know peace like this existed. She didn't know she could survive without their approval. She didn't know that someday she'd wake up pain-free not just in her body, but in her soul. I stood still for a long moment and closed my eyes. I didn't need a new beginning. I just needed this ending to be mine. And now it was. If you've ever had to fight quietly for what was already yours, I see you. If someone's ever told you that loyalty means silence, I hope Emily's story reminded you, truth doesn't need permission. Where are you watching this from today? Drop your city in the comments. And if this story hit home, you know what to do.